gang, welcome to Behind the Rhinestones. My name is Dinah Dare and I am your host, and we will be chatting to some of the stars of burlesque and cabaret, not just across the UK these days, but across the world. If you are enjoying the interviews, please do like and subscribe, as there is a new interview coming for you every Sunday. So without any ado whatsoever, I will introduce our interviewee today. It is the lovely Miss Lolly May. Hi, Lolly May.
Hi, how are you?
I am wonderful. How are you, lovely?
It is sweltering here. I am very warm, hence why I've got the curtain across here. It'll blow quite a bit, and I apologise if there's noise, but I
We probably can't
just
hear it,
can't.
so it'll be fine. But yeah, this is for everyone watching this, we are recording it during that mini heat wave that we've got at the end of June, which is quite nice, but I can't imagine what it's like in London.
Very warm.
Hmm. It's not for me. No. Mm-mm. But you're
Much
just,
prefer summer, but this is too much.
yeah. You have you not recently just flown back from somewhere that was quite sunny and warm and lovely though?
Love the sunny, yes, but I was actually north of the Arctic Circle, which is then flying back to this. When you normally go on holiday, you have that moment of stepping off the aeroplane, you go, oh, lovely heat. I've done the opposite and come back to London to the heat. Because I was in, it was very weird. I was in Finland for the Midnight Sun pinup competition,
Hmm.
which Midnight Sun, 24-hour daylight, really strange, amazing. And that's the main thing I've been sort of talking to people about is obviously how lovely it was and the competition and all the people and everything. But the midnight sun is very weird. So seeing the nighttime that night when I sort of flew back was the first time I'd seen non-sun in like a week. So it was very odd. Um,
Yeah, I saw your story about it and I was like, oh, she must have been somewhere. In my head, it was Iceland, but that makes sense that it's the same kind of latitude. Um, how was the competition? You won something, I saw.
I won the audience choice, and if I was better prepared, I would have had the trophy ready to go. Ta-da! But I completely forgot about that bit. I actually don't even know where I put it. I kind of unpacked as you typically do. I actually unpacked, unlike a lot of burlesque gigs.
Proud.
Um, Proud of myself. But I unpacked it all and then just kind of went, "Ugh," and I'm not quite sure where things are at the moment. I'm still in that getting through the wash for things because being out there for so long and having lots of different challenges and different events and things, I had to have different outfits for lots of different things. So like it was
Mm.
a proper risk of the weight limit on the suitcase. Because that's the downside of flying, I suppose, is that I had like 23 kilos. And I was like, this is gonna be over. Luckily not, somehow, despite the amount of shopping that I also came back with. Um, and the weight of the trophy, because it was quite sturdy base on it. And I was like, this is going to
Mm.
take me over. This is what's going to take me over. Not that I'm complaining. It's incredible. I can't believe I won something on it. My first ever pin-up competition. But yeah, and it was the Audience Choice Award, which was nice because then it was voted for by the people who came to the events and things. So
Mm.
they must have liked my inane ramblings.
I love that so much. And that's kind of a nice segue into what we're going to talk about in your burlesque journey, because like pinup seems to be quite a large part of your sort of presence online, and I imagine that there's a fair amount of crossover with that and burlesque for you.
Yeah, it was actually how I got into burlesque in the first place
Mm.
was very into kind of vintage style pin-up. Most of my wardrobe, that's only half of it. The other half goes along there. Majority of it is from Collective or Hell Bunny or those kind of clothing ranges. And it was something that kind of developed as a result of that. And when I do my hair, because obviously I've got dark hair, pin curls, full on, the lipstick and the eyeliner and things. And people go, oh, you look like Dita Von Teese. I'm like, you're very kind. I do not, but thank you. And obviously, her being a burlesque performer is what kind of got me into that way. That, and I'd recently gone through a breakup with a guy who was just like, I just like when you straighten your hair. And I was like, I like when you shut up. Um, so when that
Yes.
breakup happened, it was, no, I'm going to embrace this part of myself. I love this style. I love it,
Mm.
feels more me. And the burlesque thing was a more of a kind of, no, this is me really leaning into that and really enjoying taking control and ownership of my body. And I'm sorry, the curtain's going again.
No, it's okay.
But just sort of moving through that aspect, and that was how I kind of got into it that way. The pinup actually
Yeah,
came before the burlesque.
there's so many people that seems to be like it's a gateway drug into burlesque. I feel like pinup. For me, it was I've not done like proper pinup, but that kind of collective Hell Bunny, all that like I wear all them, but I didn't find them until I came into the burlesque world and everyone was like, here's where we buy all our clothes. And I was like, oh my God, these are amazing. So I came the other way. Um, but that's amazing. Congratulations. You won. What made you this we are going off on a tangent, we'll come back. What made you want to decide to do the competition?
The fact that there's none in the UK, or at least that I can find. There used to be a few pre-COVID, and they never really came back. I know the same with quite a few burlesque competitions and things where they kind of faded and just never really sort of reinvigorated post-COVID. Um, but I've sort of been following a few people who are kind of in and around that competition. And I can't even remember how I came across it specifically, but it, maybe it was one of those, it was kind of recommended plus a couple of others all at the same time. I actually entered it last year and was, selected to go through, but couldn't make it because I was getting married last year. It was quite prohibitive to then go all the way to Finland. So I had to pull out, which was really sad. But this year, then it made me really kind of know I really want this. I really want to be part of it this year. And obviously got through to the finals and got to go to Rovaniemi, which was really exciting because it's not the sort of place you would go to otherwise because it's Lapland. So why would you go there in the summer otherwise? But it was really cool and really cool to meet new people from all across Europe, and a part of the world that you would never get to travel to particularly otherwise. So no, it was amazing.
Mm, fantastic. I'm guessing that Viva Las Vegas is a goal for you then at some point.
So much so. Like it's, as I said, with the wedding last year, and then my husband and I are sort of in the process of buying a house at the moment. It wasn't on the cards last year or this year, but I'm really
Mm.
hoping that I can go next year or sort of the year after or so, because that would take a whole new wardrobe to want to go to that. To really sort of lean into the pin-up stuff. But that, yeah, is a proper goal. Between that and Beehoff, it's like I wish they were a bit closer together so I could just stay in Vegas and go to both, but that's a bit much to stay there for a month or two between the two.
Like having just been to Vegas, no, not for that long. Uh, just tour around America, that'll be fine.
We'll find the money for that just to make it worthwhile so I don't have to fly back and fly back again.
Don't recommend it. So yeah, so obviously you found your way into burlesque via pinup. Um, you're also part of the Coven in London. So is that what made you decide to eventually sort of book in and then become part of the Coven?
Coven actually came kind of organically from the way that our sort of classes. So we were obviously going through the same burlesque school,
Hmm.
and I think you covered some of this. Aya's sort of gone into a lot of detail on her previous one, so I'm not going to repeat too much of that bit. Just go back and listen to her one. I'm lazy, so that actually came off the back of that because we were supposed to have our sort of solo graduation the last weekend in March 2020. So that obviously didn't happen. But
Hmm.
we then obviously still had our group chats and things. And because we were looking forward to whenever the world opened back up again to be able to have that sort of completed one, is over that sort of spring summer before we actually had our graduation show that September. In the end, we still obviously were then just chatting and doing things, and we held Zoom calls and sort of did bits online together and online shows and things that we would watch and join in with, and it just sort of became a nice sort of group that we all sort of joined forces. And I think I sort of touched on in terms of recognizing those who wanted to do it just for the fun of that one course and have that one
Hmm.
moment, compared to those of us who we went, oh no, I do actually want to do a bit more with this. And so that sort of organically came off the back of, I suppose, COVID and not having anything else to do, and sort of banding together, and that sort of camaraderie that came off the back of it, and that collective nature. And then we obviously had our graduation. We did some bits sort of over the sort of the 6 months or so when the world opened back up, and then it all went back in again around the Christmas time slash after. And we started doing our own online shows and things. And then we were like, we really enjoy doing this, so let's just do a bit more of that. And it just sort of spiraled from there in a positive way, because now we're doing a Halloween show that we're already selling tickets for, and we haven't even actually announced it yet. It's just in the link in our bio, but people just seem to look forward to our, like, not to sort of tempt fate, but look forward to our Halloween show, which is really cool.
Mm.
Um, and it's really nice to have the kind of variety of performers that we do within the Coven, that we have our troupe acts, but we also have our solos. And there's people from kind of myself that's more on the kind of vintagey, pin-uppy sort of, I wouldn't even go so far as like cheesecake sort of end, because I've got a couple of acts that aren't quite that way, but then right the way through to kind of Aya with her like metal, like, 80s hair metal stuff, through to Gina Colada, who does like horror and gore really fucking well.
Mm.
And sort of having that mishmash of styles and alternative aspect and fashion and things is really cool to kind of bring us all together.
What I really like about the Coven is that yous aren't all a carbon copy of each other. Yous do have your different styles, your own, and I think that's really interesting to see that coming out of that school as well. I think there's been so many good performers come from that school. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Um, but yeah, what's what I love about watching you guys just kind of online, and how I think how I ended up following most of you is sort of seeing what you were doing and being like, oh, this is super interesting. I really like it. But I love the kind of behind the scenes that you are all like friends and supportive and stuff as well. I think that's really important, because I think something that's talked about a fair amount in burlesque is can be a lonely gig. So having that kind of support there seems to make a massive difference for you guys. And you have all done so well.
Well, thank you. And yeah, it's really nice to have that, especially in the early stages when we were all kind of beginners, because there were people like me who were completely new to the scene and just sort of fell into it because of the style and things, and just sort of grew from there, compared to Aya, who's kind of been in and around it for years and really sort of really immerses herself in things, and then everybody kind of in between. And so it's been really nice to kind of learn from each other. Is, they would get excited about me discovering something new, or I would quite often be like, oh my god, I've just discovered this and this performer and this act, and they would be like, yeah, that was around like 3 years ago. It's like, oh. But they would feed off my energy and my excitement, being kind of total newbie to it. And then we'd learn from people like Aya and Pandora, like Pandora with her skills on her, the veil fans and things. And that's kind of transcended into a couple of our acts that we do as a Coven as well. And a few of us have kind of done classes and things with her, that she now teaches classes on how to use veil fans and things. So it's nice to have kind of that skill sharing as well, and kind of working with each other and learning from one another, and the support network that that brings too.
Which is so sweet. Um, so obviously you've sort of touched a little bit there on your style. So how would you sort of generally describe your style?
My it's how do I phrase this? It's evolved.
Hmm.
My very first act was a bit more kind of nerdy. I don't perform that act anymore because political reasons. If you know my first act, you'll know why I don't perform it anymore. And I'm just going to not say it because she can fucking die in a hole. Um, I have feelings, as you can tell. Um, so my sort of style, I was coming into this from that pin-up sort of background, was very much, I planned on being slowly very cheeky, cheesy. And as I've sort of leaned into it a bit more, I realised, and I think this also came out of the tutelage of Evelyn Carnett, is it can be anything you want it to be. And so it's kind of evolved into, I don't have to pigeonhole myself into that. I can be a bit of everything. And so I talk about that kind of, particularly in my kind of bio that I send through for, producers and things. And it's that kind of the mix of pin-up style, because I still try and have things like my pin curls and the red lip and the eyeliner is still very much a feature of mine, and the styles of the clothing and things, even when I'm leaning into a certain element of things, still has touches of that. Then it's kind of I'm trying to say sort of rock and roll attitude. I can't really describe that as much as, say, other people in the Coven, for example, or yourself or others. But trying to be a bit more sort of edgy, because I have a very emo background, very much loving that kind of that kind of era, and it never really leaves you. It's not a phase, mom.
It's
So
oh,
it's embracing that part of myself from, if 13-year-old me could look at me now, I'd want her to be proud of me from still embracing that, and then still being very sort of powerful femininity. So it's whatever femininity means to a person, what it means to me might be different to how you embrace femininity, for example, how other people, but to me it's all wrapped up in that kind of powerful, embracing who I am and loving who I am as a person. And you can't tell me that I can't do that. So it's kind of evolved, and even now is still evolving with some of the sort of newer acts and things that I've been bringing forward.
I love I think you're saying they're evolving. I think evolving is honestly the best description for anyone's style, because as we move through not just the burlesque world, but world in general, maybe what you want to say or how you want to say it can change, and therefore your style can change along with it. So I think that's a really nice way of describing it without pigeonholing yourself in any sort of way, as you've said.
Exactly. It's, you know, allowing myself that that is okay to change and that everybody changes. I'm sure if you look back at Betty Bombshell and when she first started out is probably quite different. You look at Gingerly Valentine, she posted something the other day about being a baby burlesque performer in her Christmas act, compared to how she is now. Everybody evolves, everybody changes. Nobody starts doing something thinking this is what I'm going to be like forever, no matter what that is, burlesque or otherwise. So,
Mm.
you know, embracing the fact that change is not a bad thing if it means that you're being true to yourself and comfortable in that.
Yeah. And what are some of your sources of inspiration then when it comes to acts? Like, and I mean that's a really general question, sorry. So I mean that in terms of like not just other performers, but like, is it music that inspires you? Is it art? Is it like, where do you kind of pull your different inspirations from?
Everywhere, to be honest, kind of modern culture, full stop. So, for example, the act that I'm probably most well known for is my White Winged Dove act that I do to my Stevie Nicks, Edge of 17. And that actually came about because I bought this dress on Vinted that I was like, this is cool. This could be used as an act. I also wanted to do veil fans, and I had brought some white veil fans just for kind of practice and was learning from Pandora. And then I was like, I've no idea how I'm going to bring this all together. I hadn't even thought of those two things as being together, even though we're both white, which in hindsight you go, duh. But it was then when I heard Edge of 17, it came on. I think I was rewatching School of Rock. And obviously that's the song that's on when they go to the bar, isn't it? And that came on,
Hmm.
and she talks about being the white winged dove. And it was like suddenly a moment of like light bulb. And that's where I started bringing that sort of things together. So inspiration kind of comes from everywhere for me. Similarly with I've taken ZZ Stardust attitude to purchasing things online, and it's future me might need this. My husband doesn't agree quite so much, but I'll sort of go, I like that idea, I'll buy it, and then maybe an act will come forward soon. And I did that when Frankie Fictitious did a sale a year or so ago of a load of
Yes.
stuff online on her website, and I was like, I'm just going to buy a load of things, no idea what I'm going to use them for, but something will come out of that. And eventually, actually, I started creating my Lilith act, which again came off the back of I went to an exhibition on feminism through history and like how it's been represented in art and culture at the British Museum. And there was lots of motifs around Lilith or Lilith adjacent characters, and that sort of started inspiring me. Then there was my husband started playing. Oh God, there was a video game that recently came out again that has Lilith as basically one of the anti-heroines, and I can't remember what it's called now, and it's going to bug me. I'll remember like right at the end of the podcast and just go this. Um, there might be Dark Souls. I could be making that up. Anyway, that's really going to annoy me. Basically, she was in it and she was really cool. And Halsey did a song based around the Lilith character, and it kind of brought that forward. And I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. Now things are starting to come together. And actually then going through, I had an idea of what I wanted to do from the costume because I'd seen something similar that Jezebel Thunder had done, where she had like veils on the front and back of her costume that these then sort of pulled off. I've obviously done it in a very different way because hers is baby pink and beautiful and very feminine and elegant and in that aspect. And I was trying to go down a different path with it. But I was like, oh, okay, that is quite a cool thing. What can I do that's like a chest piece or a necklace or something? And then I was digging through my box and found one of these pieces that I'd bought from that Frankie Patricia sale and was like, oh, there we go. Zizi's mantra of buying now for future me has actually come to fruition. She's going to hate, I'm going to hate admitting that, but it has worked. And it's meant then that I was able to kind of take, okay, I've had the idea for that. Let's bring that in there. That music has come together. I like the lore of this character and this woman, you know, the original woman, as it were, because, you know, the
Mm.
biblical story about her actually being around and wanting equality for Adam and being shunned for it.
Yep.
That was where I was kind of going with that, was like, no, it's okay to want that. how do I bring that forward? And embracing that dark energy, which is obviously then very different to the
Yeah.
White Winged Dove Act and a couple of others that I've got. So it's a very long-winded way of basically answering your question with it. Inspiration kind of comes from everywhere, and it kind of depends on, sometimes the music comes first, sometimes a bit of costume, sometimes a prop. Um,
Yeah.
and so then suddenly you start to sort of formulate something that actually takes shape. And then it's just getting that to a place where you go, I'm comfortable with this and I like this. And even then it can go on stage once. White Winged Dove, for example, has changed several times and now has the boots that I'm quite famous for and the big old ponytail, whereas previously that started with like um that sort of elasticated kind of body cage type lingerie, and now it's like full on like wing style bra cups and the big 70s boots and things, which is so different to how it first started. And it's all about that kind of evolution and going with it.
You've like, it's so interesting because you've looked back to talk about how you do different styles just in that explanation. And I was going to ask you about your creative process. You've answered. Love that. You're like, I will answer your questions before you even ask them. Um, I am borrowing Zizi's buy now for future me because I buy stuff and I'm like, I don't really know what that's for, but I really like it, so I'm just going to buy it. And now I can be like, well, Zizi says, because I'm you, my partner's like, what's that for? And I'm like, oh,
Future me.
yeah, I might need it. You
Turkish
never
Delight is
know.
the queen of vintage. A, she is selling loads of things, and B, will just like find stuff, and you just go, how do you find this? She's a goddess when it comes to sourcing things on Vinted.
I don't, her Ivy Malice is always posted about stuff she found in thrift stores as well. And I'm like, I need someone to teach me how to thrift store because I am clearly not doing it properly. I need a lesson. This is a call out for anyone watching this. Give me a thrift store lesson. I need to. But no. Um, no, that's it's interesting talking about where you get your inspiration from. It can come from anywhere, but I love the specific examples there were quite different. Um, it just kind of shows, yeah, it comes from anywhere and everywhere. What is your, this is such a generic question as well, but what's your favorite thing about being a burlesque performer?
Sure. So I have ADHD and a few sort of chronic health issues and things. And I love the fact that it's one of those, it's the longest hobby I've ever kept up for a start. And as somebody with
Mm.
ADHD, that there's a lot of hobbies that have kind of come. If you look at past me of kind of musical instruments and certain types of dancing and yoga and Pilates, which lasted all of about 3 lessons, and then you go, I'm bored of this now. The thing I love about burlesque from that aspect is the variety of things that go into it. So everything from kind of music, costuming, choreography, going to classes, going to shows, networking, plus all the admin and stuff that goes behind it, and actually performing. But it's all the stuff behind it that I love as well, because I can sit and just stick a podcast on and just hyper focus on rhinestoning for hours and forget to drink, forget to go to the loo, forget to eat anything. And suddenly I'm like, oh, it's got dark. Whoops. But I love that because I love the fact that I can just sit and do things for ages and sort of get really, really into it. And then similarly, I suppose with the sort of health issues and things, it's one of those, it's such a collaborative, um, or inclusive environment that actually that's not a barrier. That I
Mm.
know performers in wheelchairs, for example. I know performers who use canes and even dancing. I know performers who have changed their style because their health issues have altered and it's not inhibited them in any way. It's one of those industries where being a bit different, I suppose, whether that's, your gender identity or your sort of sexuality, your health, your the way your brain ticks, being neurodivergent, it's actually a positive because it shows that breadth of cabaret, of kind of
Mm.
the cross section of culture and the intersectionality of all of it. And that's the thing I love, is that it's all things to all people. Burlesque is just a tiny part of that. But even there, people can, like Turkish Delight, gone back to again, does those seated burlesque workshops, which are incredible. And I know she's doing some at at Hull in a few weeks, where she's doing a whole class on that. She's done online classes to make it accessible for people who can't get there in person, because obviously the whole point is accessibility. And not having any barriers to that. And that's the thing I suppose I love the most, is it's everything.
Mm. It keeps your mind, and also you're talking there about ADHD. I don't have ADHD, partner does. Um, because there's always something new, there's a new act to make, there's a new thing to make, there's a new form of inspiration, and you're not doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. There's always something new to kind of grasp at, I suppose. So in comparison to that then, what is your least favourite thing about being a performer, being a burlesque performer, or being in this industry, I suppose?
I suppose it's not so much thing with performing and with burlesque and stuff, but I suppose going back to my health issues, that I can't do as much
Mm.
as I would like to. It's a recent diagnosis. It's only really sort of come about in the last couple of years. But they've really, I suppose, kind of accelerated in the last couple of years in terms of symptoms and things coming to the fore. And it's actually really created sort of a barrier to things, is that I can't get to shows and do things as much as I would like. I've had to start declining shows and applying to things less. And while obviously I know that, as I just said, it's a very inclusive environment, if you're a producer and you cast somebody and then a week before the show you have to decline and suddenly you have to find a new performer, it is quite challenging. So I'm sort of just finding that middle ground at the moment between what I can do, what I'm able to do, what I want to do, and that element, I suppose, of it. So I suppose it's less about the industry itself and more about the access to things, particularly in venues in London, for example. There's a lot of older pubs and things, for example, where they've got like theatres and stuff above them that don't have like any kind of accessible access. It's just through stairs. We used to perform, the Coven used to produce in a venue like that a few years ago, and then we recently switched. I say recently, a couple of years ago, switched to a different venue because there was a barrier to our audience being able to participate, and a couple of our witches not being able to kind of get in there as much as we would like them to. And we were like, we don't want people to have to face that barrier. And
Yeah.
while it is hard for those venues, I guess, because they're often in like listed buildings, meaning they can't install some of these modern features that you need to be able to make it an accessible environment, it does mean that we can't host our shows there because we want everybody to be able to come. And we want our own witches and myself to be able to get to them. And, if it was up a teeny tiny crooked staircase with stairs this big and then this big, you might struggle if I'm having a bad day with my health. So, it's the balance in, I can't apply to certain shows because of their venues and things, or if there are like lots of travel. For example, obviously it's where I've met you, isn't it? I've come up to Glasgow a couple of times, and I would have to kind of really save up my energy in advance and make sure I've got nothing in the few days afterwards to ensure that I can do that to my full ability.
Mm. I I do think something that I admire about the Coven, just you're talking there as well, is that you do have a commitment to not just accessibility but inclusivity. You guys are very much living what you want to see in the industry. And obviously it directly impacts you around accessibility, but I feel like you guys do it because it's important, not necessarily because it's relevant directly to you. Obviously that is directly to you, but you also try and still be inclusive in general. Um,
Yeah, very much
it's
so.
just
We
some,
won't even go to certain shows if there's a reason that we can't. For example, if there's not enough diversity on the cast, say it was an entirely white cast, I would not feel comfortable also being part of that show. And I know a lot of the Coven feel the same way.
Mhm.
I'm sure a lot of people also feel the same way. When there's so many incredible performers of colour, like the Black Burlesque School and everything Sadie Sinner's doing there, the Bitten Peach and everything Evelyn's doing, there's so many good performers who are not white who you can cast in your show. It's really not difficult these days. And I appreciate if you've got open casting calls and you don't have people apply to your show who are people of colour, that's slightly different. But then invest in some time in reaching out to those people. Send Sadie a message and say, I'm putting on this show and I would love to invite some of your cast to go. Evelyn, I know, is very open to having those sorts of conversations and how they can make them accessible, not just to people, I say, with additional needs, but also, if you don't see yourself represented in a cast, you're not then likely to go along to it, either in the audience or to apply to it in future. So it becomes a barrier in itself, even through that. So we make a real effort, the fact that we're an entirely white, femme-ish cast of performers in the Coven. So we make a real effort to try and not just, because it would be so easy for it to just fill it with other people who are like us, because there's such an oversaturation. But there's so many incredible performers who don't fit that mold, who we're like, no, we want you because we want you in our lineup because you're incredible, not just as a box tick to say, yes, we have a black person in our lineup. No, we want to show the full range of diversity that is in that in the cabaret industry.
Which everyone should be doing. But that's a we could, we'll not get into that. We'll be here for about a whole day. Um, you kind of touched on it a little bit just around your kind of health issues, but how, just sort of in general, how do you balance real life and burlesque?
Great difficulty. No, I'm joking. I hilariously, I've got a very busy day job. I'm in the PR sector, but for real estate. So I spend a lot of time in like hard hats and high vis and steel toe cap boots, which is very different to then, prancing around on stage in sparkly lingerie. But I'm really open about it at work. Luckily, a lot of my team are female or queer, which is really nice. And I'm very sort of open about the fact that I perform. And so a lot of my colleagues can then tell if I've got a gig after work that evening because I'll come with my hair in like the plaits against my head. So I've got ready for my wig to go on and my suitcase. And originally people would go, "Oh, you're off anywhere nice?" I'm like, "It's a Tuesday, my love. Where do you think I'm going?" But no, I'm just performing this evening. But I'll make a joke out of that still because some people still don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
say my health issues stop me being like they prohibit me being as active on the scene as I would like to, and trying to find that balance between kind of day job, performing and attending shows, and just living with my partner and being active with my kind of friends and things, and having to kind of work out where my energy needs to be spent. And as I say, if I've got a busy time at work, but then I'm about to go and do a couple of gigs as well, I'll make sure that I sort of rest in advance so that it kind of balances those things out. And I mean, I'm new to the chronic health issue thing. So I'm quite glad I've got friends and things who have got, not that I'm glad they've got issues, but I'm glad that I've got other people that I can speak to about these things and try to sort of find those balances between the two.
No, that makes sense. I can't imagine how difficult it is having that kind of newer chronic illness to balance as well. I know how difficult it can be balancing a day job with this world, especially when it gets busy, which we all have those periods where it's insanity. Um, Obviously, as well, you've done a couple of international shows, which is great. Um, what is one of the things that you quite enjoy about being able to do the sort of international shows?
Biggest thing for me, I think, is meeting people from around the world, from around Europe, other places, and seeing how they interpret burlesque, because there's obviously different styles of burlesque even within that, from the kind of very neo right the way through to the very hyper classical and kind of everything in between as like a scale. And I love that some countries lean more towards the classic, and I love seeing how people kind of interpret that, but push the boundaries and what's still considered classic in order to get them booked, compared to some countries where I think London's quite progressive in terms of its kind of neo style of things. I know there's obviously things like Brighton and things where it's really kind of pushing the boundaries and things. And I love going to like fringes and stuff to kind of see those newer things. But I love then going to these international shows and meeting new people. It's a good, obviously, network increase. And I've made some really good friends off the back of going to some of these shows. But then similarly, actually just seeing how burlesque is kind of presented across the world. It was quite funny though, going to Rome January earlier this year, I needed to do a fix on my corset. So I was like, right, I'm going to bring that in my hand luggage so I can do some fixes on the plane. So I was like, I've got a couple of hours to kill, might as well. But my bag got stopped and sort of pulled to one side. Hey, cat. Bag got sort of pulled to one side. And I was thinking, oh God, it's because I've got my sewing kit in there. I didn't even think, duh, needles. And then she was searching through, like, luckily the person searching through it was a woman because she pulled it out and went, "You're a best performer by any chance?" I was like, "Yes." And then was like, "It's the corset, the steel boning in the corset was what pulled it up." But then obviously she opened my bag, saw a really sparkly corset and went, "Yep." And I sort of explained where I was then going and what I was doing. She was like, "Oh, that's really cool." Obviously just let me go after that once she'd done the kind of full thing and challenged it, like, made sure it was definitely the corset. But she was like, "Yeah." So I didn't even think about that going through. I was just trying to be clever and use my time on the plane by myself for a couple of hours to get some sewing done.
That's what you would do. Like,
Yeah.
there's no, yeah. I got pulled over. I went to Tenerife in January for like a pole camp, and just had like a suit, just a carry on, and my pole heels were in there, and I didn't realize there's a um kind of similar like metal rods in the heels of pleasers, and apparently it can look like a gun on.
Oh,
Mm, it can
when you
look
were
like the
saying that, I
tube.
was thinking like hidden metal device, as in like
Apparently,
something.
it can look like the tubing of like a gun. So I mean, don't really. They just checked it, but she opened it and she went, "Oh, it's your heels." But like, so I was like,
It's good, but
"Oops."
they must be more used to that now, where we're kind of here, there, and everywhere, different performers and things. They must be like, oh yeah, she's just a performer. They're just a performer.
Yeah, yeah. My favorite one has still been. Was it coming back from Rome when I did Amore 2 years ago? And no, it wasn't because it was whatever one I did that I had. I took Pleasantville, which has obviously got a big blue dildo in it, and I went with Carry On, and it was this young guy that opened it, and he went scarlet. He looked at it, closed it, and just gave me it.
I often wonder how who's it? Ginger, completely
Is
forgotten
it
her name.
Ginger Misdemeanor?
Yes. Oh my God. My brain went Ginger Valentine. I was like, that's not right. Ginger
The
Misdemeanor, obviously, with
Bumblebee?
the yes. And the rhinestone sparkly.
Yep,
And
yep.
she travels a lot. She does a lot of international shows, especially with that gig as well. That must be hilarious when people open that and it's like shiny sequin.
Yeah. I've
Sorry,
considered,
I've just like unveiled a big part of her reveal of that outfit.
yeah, if you haven't seen that, go see it for starters. It's fucking hilarious. But
And you didn't hear that.
yeah, just pretend you didn't hear that. But yeah, um, poor guy opened mine and was like, but also I was like, what? I wonder what he wonders what I do with that because like it gets flung around on the floor and I just throw it back in my bag. So like it's dusty and covered in like everything. It's not like I pick it up and clean it and put it back in my bag. I clean it before I take it back on stage, but it ends up filthy by the time it ends up back in my bag. So the guy's probably like, what the fuck?
As we do with all costumes, because who actually washes costumes?
It's fine.
In the
Um,
bag.
it's fine. So we've talked a bit about when you started was a weird time to start. But even since then, what changes have you seen happen in burlesque, or do you think there has been any big shifts?
It's a really hard one because I only got into burlesque kind of in 2019. So I wasn't really around it to see what it was like pre-COVID.
Yep.
But I suppose the biggest difference is just seeing things come to life again, like gradually and gradually. And I think things have kind of petered off again recently. I've seen loads of shows that have been cancelled, ticket sales are really low. And people just not getting out of spot. I make an effort, especially if I can't attend a show, I'll try and pay it forwards and things like that to kind of help. Um, but I suppose it's hard to kind of say because even in those 5 years, it's not like it's been a normal 5 years that I've been in and around the industry. But I think it's just kind of important that people get out and support all types of shows and see things. It's something I say to new performers if ever I get chatting to them is go to not just shows you want to see in the sense of, well, this is my interest. Hello, back again. But also shows that show a breadth of things and just making sure then because I think actually that's one thing I have seen I suppose is that people are embracing the alternative and that more neo style of things a lot more, especially in kind of drag and that overlap of like draglesque. People are really kind of embracing that alternative scene and different music styles and different ways of dressing and things. And I love that. I think it's one of the best things about this industry is that mix of everything that people bring forward. And I think there's been a lot more of embracing of that over the last, I want to say 2, 3 years in particular, that people have really gone, no, this is what I like to do, and fuck you if you don't want to watch it. But then there's loads of us out there who do go, yes, more of that, please, please. So, it's that variety of stuff again, and showing people that you can be more, and that it's cool and interesting.
Yes. You're going to see an ear because he's decided it's food time when it's not. So he's just going to stand there.
An hour
Um,
early.
he is an hour early. Um, I had a question, and my cat's it's not a question. Sorry, that was what I was going to say. Just what you're saying there about people making the more kind of out there stuff or weird stuff. I feel like a shift I've seen sort of maybe the past couple of years is people sort of having a realization that you don't have to make something you think is bookable. You just have to make something you want to make. Because I feel like there was a period of time where everyone was trying to make stuff that they thought was bookable, and we got a bit homogenous. And it feels like we're shifting away from that. And I actually don't know if it's partly because of things like drag kind of coming more into our scene, or if it's just with COVID and being online, everyone got exposure to a lot more. Like, I don't know, but I kind of we went through a weird phase at one point where having internet meant everyone kind of became the same. And now it feels like everyone is trying to just do what they want to do. And I think that's interesting.
I think that's where the internet stuff actually did the opposite, and it made us kind of realize, oh, we can do anything and still get booked with things. And you would see performers, and I particularly like this in the kind of drag scene where you've got more than just drag queens, but there's drag kings and drag things, which is my favorite term of
Hmm.
kind of fuck gender and just doing whatever the fuck you want. And I actually think the access to the internet and seeing more of that has made people feel more comfortable to do it themselves, which in turn makes people do more. And it's all just kind of that cyclical more is more is more. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah. I want to see more of it for sure. This is a random question, but it's been kind of tickling in my brain since we started talking at the start. With talking about there, we're talking about we want to be different and you want to create something different. One of the things that I think pushes us to end up being the same a lot is actually everyone thinks that you need to be Dita and you need to look like Dita and you need to have costumes like Dita. Obviously, she's got a show that's just opened in London and she's touring next year. And there's been a lot of chat online about whether or not people are going to go. What is your sort of thoughts on Dita touring with the sort of decline of local entertainment as well? And I'm totally aware that I've just thrown this like potentially massive question at you with absolutely no forewarning, so please take your time.
I went into burlesque thinking that's what burlesque was,
Mhm.
because people made the comparison to Dita and things, which I'm like, no. Especially if you see me perform, I can't do that. Because I don't have a classical dance training background. I don't always stand with my feet in perfect form, and my hands aren't always perfectly as they should be. But again, going back, it's one of the things I love about burlesque is that you don't have to have that kind of background on things. I think it's amazing to see that kind of come back around again, because she had a few years where she didn't do a lot. She had obviously her tour in Vegas and things and her show there, but didn't really do a lot of the kind of bigger tours. And I think that's amazing for bringing burlesque back into the mainstream, because you've got things like obviously Diamonds and Dust, the new show, plus her tour. Plus she came around a couple of years ago and toured, which we went to see as the Coven, as like a sort of a group night out, which was really fun. Um, but we were sitting there watching this going, this is a very, very classic type of burlesque. And it sort of reinforced the fact that that's not what we want to do, which I suppose quite helped in terms of kind of that, I suppose, I don't want to say underground scene, but it's the not so, mainstream scene, I suppose is the better word of kind of describing it. So I think it's helpful in the sense of that and the movie burlesque now being on the stage and Moulin Rouge and things like that, kind of bringing that to the fore as like back into the cultural zeitgeist. And then I think in turn that helps, because then people go, I want to see more of this. And then they go down that rabbit hole of kind of going, oh, wow, there's actually way more than I realized. Because even me going into this, that's all I saw was this beautiful kind of hyper classic, beautiful stage glitz and glamour. And then the more I got into things and the more I did things and exposed myself to stuff, the greater my understanding of what that was. And so I'm hoping that actually has it a positive effect on the industry in general, because it will make people start to go, I want to book more of these, I want to go to more of these shows, see something that's slightly different, and then go on to a little bit more, and then a little bit more, and a little bit more. from there. So
Mm.
while it's challenging because, as we sort of touched on previously, there is a decline in ticket sales and things are kind of struggling a bit, I'm hoping that it will have kind of the adverse effect in bringing it back round again.
Mm. I hope so. I remember she did the tour, was it 4 years ago? Because I definitely went to it in Edinburgh. It was the first time I'd seen her, first time she came. I was like, I have to go and see her. And what I like about Dita is she goes out of her way to tour, to bring other performers with her on tour. There's been chat about it being local performers this time, but I don't know if that's accurate or not, or if it's still that she's going to have people that she tours with. Um, I don't know what the chat around that actually is, but I enjoyed the show. Yeah, for same for me, it gave me context as to this is not necessarily what I want to do. Costumes are pretty, but isn't for me. What I will say is, off the back of that, I think we saw an increase in people wanting to like attend classes, but not necessarily an increase in people going to shows. And that's my concern is that, and also other performers putting money into going to see her. Great, do it. If you've not done it, go. Highly recommend, but then not putting the money in going to local shows. I am choosing to not go and see her this time, and I'm going to put the money into local shows instead. Um, but I know that's been a bit of a weird one. I do think if you haven't seen her, go see her. It's definitely worth going once. But I think once you've seen her once, you've kind of seen her.
That's my mentality, is going to that tour. And I went to it twice with different groups, like different groups of friends, and I saw the same show twice. And while it was slightly different, because like Tosca would do slightly different acts on different ones and things like that, it's still effectively the same show. And I don't think I'll go to her tour either. I've been umming and ahhing on whether to go to the Western one that obviously Tosca's been producing because Dee Dee Dare is in it, and I know her from the London scene. But and I want to go to support her, and I know a couple of other performers and things who are kind of in their
Yeah.
ensemble. But I'm like, I want to go to support them, not necessarily because it's Dita for exactly that reason. I'm like, I've seen it.
But then you could go to a date. Dita's put the dates up that she's doing London, so you could go on one of the dates that she's not doing London, because I think you'll get Dee Dee then.
That's what I was planning, but it's still very expensive.
It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. Um, yeah, that
That's
was
where I'm
just a
hoping
side.
it will. That's where I'm hoping it will cycle back to kind of the smaller shows, is that people will see that and go, that's too expensive, but I really want to see some burlesque. What else is out there instead? And maybe there's a marketing opportunity, I suppose, to kind of things that can push and fill that gap.
Mm, yeah, that would be good. I would love that because I do. I feel like every these conversations happen in this community all the time. Like burlesque the musical happened, and everybody went, "Oh, well, we see an increase in sales." No, like data student, well, we see it. No,
It's just
like
it takes someone to kind of go put the head over the parapet and go, yeah, look at
yes, I think we need to try and find ways of maximizing our reach when these are on. Um, yeah, I don't
marketeer in
produce.
me goes hashtags, jumping aboard trends, using the sounds that they're using, and that's just socials. Then you can do a bit of paid spend on your acts if you can afford it, to kind of really promote the shows and things that you're doing and the names and things that are in your shows and leveraging their audiences. But again, it goes back to kind of that privilege of performers who have got money to produce.
Exactly, that's the thing. Like I don't produce because it's more of a headache than I can deal with right now. But yeah, even I was talking to someone on one of these previous episodes about even just going out and flyering, like old school flyering at some of like people are coming out of seeing Burlesque the musical. Here's some flyers for some local shows. Um, yeah, I think we need to get smarter. Socials, unfortunately, let's be honest, it's an echo chamber. We're telling people to go to local shows and all we're shouting at is our performers. So, yeah. Yeah, sorry, that was a weird one, but like it just popped into my head because you mentioned Dita earlier and then we were talking about a few things and I was like, I will ask. Um, you kind of touched on it about go-to shows, but like if you had to start all over again and it wasn't COVID times, let's pretend that didn't happen. What do you wish you knew earlier?
Um, I think it actually ties back to, and I sort of alluded to earlier about kind of advice for newbies and things, and maybe it's kind of similar to that sort of question, is what advice I would give myself and what advice I would give that, because I didn't have access to the advice I would give people now because of COVID. And the number one thing I always say to people is go to shows,
Yep.
go to shows, build your community, spend that time. It's not just about stage time, but it's about learning and absorbing and seeing what's out there, be an active audience member, increase your network, get chatting to people, both in the audience, the producers, the performers, offer to kitten, offer to help out at shows, take classes. And again, this is where the difficulty was with COVID, is that everything was online. So you would join classes and do things to build your network, but it didn't necessarily have that same effect of meeting somebody in person. You're still too early for lunch.
I know.
And you couldn't help out at shows because they weren't physical. So, I mean, that's always the thing I give to people is go to shows and really kind of immerse yourself into that. And I said, that's the advice I'd give people now. It's the advice I would give myself if I were to be new now, is to be doing a lot of those, but also to don't be afraid to like reach out to people online, because we're all there. It's not just a shiny shop front, our Instagram pages. We're also humans and we have a DM. And if you're unsure about a certain producer or a certain performer that you've been cast alongside and you've got bad juju, or you've got nervousness about traveling to a certain show or what your fees should be and things like that, like reach out to more established performers, ask questions, show that engagement of things. Because then when you're casting for other shows, you go, oh, I remember that person, they really did their due diligence. I trust them as a performer as well, because I know they didn't just jump into every little nook and cranny of the industry just to get reach. They actually sort of took the time to really think about it, and they've got the smarts that I think they're going to go far.
Mm. I do wonder sometimes, just because you're chatting there, if we are a industry that favors extroverts, even though I would admit, I would probably guess that quite a lot of us are naturally introverts.
Potentially, but I think there's a balance to be had in terms of what type of person you are. Because I'm quite extroverted, but sometimes the spoons will be low, and I'll know that I want to go to a show, but I won't be my normal like that self in the
Yeah.
audience. But I'll still make a point of kind of having a couple of conversations just one on one with a couple of people, as opposed to doing the full circle of the room and the audience that I would do on a good day. So I think it's about kind of picking your moment. If you go to a show but you're not confident to get chatting to somebody, follow them online afterwards and drop them a DM and just go, hey, it was really lovely to meet you. I'd love to X, Y, and Z, learn from you, do a one-on-one, whatever that is. Or if you're producing again in the future, I'd love to help out, etc. So if you don't feel comfortable reaching out to people in person, don't be afraid to do it online.
Yeah. Online's less scary, isn't it?
Yeah. Because you can be a bit
100%.
more like detached from it, and you can just kind of go, send that message.
Send the message, throw the phone halfway across the room and don't look at it.
Yeah.
I've done that many a times. Um, this has been really fun. Do you want to tell our lovely viewers and listeners where they can follow you online?
Yes, I mean, I'm at Miss Lolly May on pretty much every social media going except Twitter. But mostly I'm online on Instagram, so I'm at Miss Lolly May on there. But occasionally I'll be on Facebook and things too.
Amazing. Thank you so much. No, thank you so much for joining me this morning and being interrupted by my greedy ass cat.
Always a pleasure. I live
It was
vicariously through other cat owners where I'm not allowed one myself yet.
yet. No, but thank you so much for joining me, and hopefully you'll be up in Scotland soon and we can dance together.
That would be lovely. Or you can come to London.
Oh, maybe. Anyway, thank you so much, lovely. Have a good
Thank
day.
you so much. Bye.
Bye.